afternoon session. Come.
There is a plastic one there.
So our presenters have each 15 minutes to tell us, to make us understand what they have worked on for over 6 months. In those 15 minutes, we wish to understand what they have been working on. But this is a continuation of the earlier session, which was on policy briefs. So what policy implications perhaps do their works allude to, ought to come out clearly in what they are going to be telling us? And for the policy brief, not an expert, but I understand you must be clear on which ministry, all organization, all sector you want your work to speak to, which policy and which policy gaps are in there, and what does your work hope to bring in a change in as far as the policy is concerned. So without taking much of our time, because we are 1 hour and 15 minutes late, permit me invite Mr. James Mbazira to take us through his work. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mr. Chair. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Protocol observed, I want to welcome you back from the lunch session. And as the study emulated looking at agropastoral resilience to drought, this study started as an initial study when I looked at the drought vis-a-vis the agropastoral communities. All of us here in the house, we are agropastoral in one way or the other. We rear animals and also we grow crops at the same time. So I'm looking at those people who do the two at a go, and at the same time they are living within a constrained region called the cattle corridor of Uganda, which stretches from the southwestern part of Uganda to the northeastern part of Uganda. Within this cattle corridor, drought is no longer something which is out of scope. Drought is known, but it is becoming more disastrous, more a threat to the agropastoral communities, especially those who rear livestock at the different stages and grow crops. Looking at this study, it is part of the PhD work I conducted when I looked at the resilience dynamics of agropastoral communities in the cattle corridor of Uganda. For policy implications, here we ask, how do transformative responses increase agropastoral resilience to drought? The transformative responses I'm looking at are the practical actions that agropastoralists take. How do they increase their ability to prepare, to adapt, and to recover from a drought? Many of us, we may be within, but when we don't know what we are doing. In Uganda, within the cattle corridor, 70% of these people have been affected by drought, with severe shortages of feed for the livestock, water, as well as food for people. many go without food. And as a call based on the Sustainable Development Goal 13, as well as Uganda Vision 2040 and NAP Agric 2018, they call upon us communities or local people to engage in climate resilient options, that we may build our resilience in one way or the other. And the best way to build the resilience is to adapt. How do we adapt? We adapt looking at the three capacities: the absorptive, the adaptive, and the transformative. Having gone through this region, I noticed that many people have been talking about adaptation. However, they recommended that transformative responses could be key to change the state of our lives as people living within the cattle corridor. I carried out this study within the cattle corridor, choosing or using a cross-sectional survey from the southern part of the cattle corridor, central up the northeastern part. Participants were largely agropastoral farmers and extension workers, to a tune of 426 members whom I contacted. And also I did analyze data about drought. How is it a problem? Is it a disaster or not? Because you cannot just go and compare things which are not matching. And this is what I found out. This is what is happening in the cattle corridor. Some of us were coming from Rakai. Drought from 1990 to 2020, 30 years down the road. This is the state in Rakai, and that is the state in Sembabule. And then when you come to central here, Nakaseke, we are tending more to severe droughts, and extreme pockets are rising in the region. Nakasongola, we are getting more into the severe point of drought. Napak, they are also doing the same, but however there are changes in Napak. We found out that there are some areas which are becoming wet in Napak. However, in Nakapiripirit, the situation is getting worse. So sampling those areas and also talking to farmers, it gives me the impetus again to come and see what do they use, how do they adapt, transformatively, practically, what do they do. This is what we are doing within the cattle corridor. Most of the farmers had changed to planting dual-purpose crops, growing maize which can serve as food at the same time as feed for the livestock. Some of them were doing dry garden farming. You can see that lady there, drawing water from a spring, and they had grown passion fruits there, and they are doing well. This lady on this side is doing her job of water. She waters crops during the rainy season, and she has grown tomatoes within the cattle corridor, and that is in Sembabule, and they are doing well. Coming down, we are seeing changes in Nakaseke, where people have also adopted agroforestry practices, putting together crops and trees. Others are doing other activities. Food banking is becoming key. However, when you look at the retention of water in the ditches as well as in the springs, most of these cattle corridor zones, because of the low water table and the intermittence of this drought scourge, it is forcing them to rely on the spring water, as well as directly diversifying the livestock, especially in the Karamoja region, where it took Nakapiripirit and Napak. Out of this, I noticed that transformative responses contribute to agropastoral resilience, because the question was, do they contribute, yes or no? Looking at a multivariate analysis here, to a local person may not understand what a multivariate analysis is. I try to compare and get an index here. How is it done? Is it contributory or not? Looking at this slide, you notice that the blue, that is Central Region, Nakasongola and Nakaseke. The gray, that is the Northeastern Region, Nakapiripirit and Napak. That brownish, yellowish kind of is the one in combining Rakai and Zimbabwe. How these activities they do contribute to their ability to exist despite the droughts. Though they are cyclic, they are increasing, but planting dual-purpose crops has served a great job in the cattle corridor. Just like looking at fodder making, dry season gardening, food banking, and forestry practices, hedging, as well as crop gardens with livestock and others. However, when you check with farmers, this is what we noticed. Farmers were complaining of the costly nature of these responses. Buying purpose crops is not easy. The maize, grains, the sorghum, the livestock also becomes a problem. Limited knowledge of other benefits. They only know that when you grow maize, you can only get what? Food or feeds. They don't know other benefits. And then the low attention to irrigation farming within the cattle corridor. Noticing that they were suffering. Walking longer distances to fetch water became a challenge to them. Limited impact of social networks. Most of these activities, the transformative responses, they are copying them from one point to another, from one area to another. A person in Nakapiripirit visits a person in Matanyi or in Iriri in a park, takes something from there, goes to Moriata, goes to Kaumongole and puts it there. A person in Nakasongola goes to Nakaseke to pick something new. But that kind of social networking needed the hand of the government, needed the hand of the private sector, needed the hand of the local government to get involved. Given the fact that even when you look at the agriculture extension officers, which I met in Zimbabwe, Raka, in Chifamba, Matete areas, Biakabanda, most of them are less knowledgeable about the transitions in farming. Therefore, farmers were suffering. Based on this policy brief, I recommended the following. Collaboration of the Ministry of Agriculture with the private sector and the local government to support farmers to do resource stock taking, to find out what is in this community. Some of us, if we go to Moroto, we go to Napak, these people are really in total dismay. But if we do stock taking, what is here? I noticed that I've not put pictures of windmills which were put in those areas. If I'd put them, you can get amazed. They are in the bush. They are not pumping anything because the person who implemented those things there or took them there, it was a government policy, it was a fund, and they never knew whether they could help to pump water. And putting Karamoja aside, go to Rakai. The water tables are not stable. Therefore, people must first do resource stock, train the people on what to do. Policy makers and implementers, please let's do our part. Then there is a need to diversify benefits of dual-purpose crops and fodder making. Not only to look at only livestock as food, to give it to food but they can sell. In Kenya, the story is different. They cut the grass, put it on the market. Other people are gazetting gardens where they can grow this grass and other crops. In other areas, they cut banana stems and they sell them. But in the cattle corridor, the problem is still there. So there is a need for an intervention. Strengthening dry season gardening by gazetting natural water sources. The springs are there, but no one to do the needful. We need you in those areas. Me and you, we are agro-pastoral farmers. We need to work hand in hand to have food on the table, to raise our cattle, to raise our goats, our donkeys, chicken, and others. There's a need to strengthen interactions and collective actions that shape the attitude and the motivations of these people towards building their resilience. I want to thank you for listening to me, and also take this opportunity to thank my supervisors, the Coast Claim Project, Sentinel Project, and Makerere, and the government of Uganda that sponsored this study throughout. Thank you so much. Remain James Mbazira. God bless you.
Thank you very much, James. And I know members are taking note of their concerns. This is a very interesting study space, given that what we call the cattle corridor occupies nearly 35% of Uganda's land surface. And that means a lot as far as contributing to the food basket of the country is concerned. And mere fact that the speaker recently talked of taxing cattle also, it is good. And we are waiting to hear more on that. And next is none other than Dennis Nsubga on sustainable management of agricultural waste in Uganda using the concept of circular economy. Thank you and welcome.
Thank you very much, Chair. As introduced, my name is Dennis Nsubga. I'm a fresh PhD graduate. I graduated in January this year. Thank you very much. So, the Chair said we are presenting work of 6 months. Mine is actually a 4 years journey instead of 6 months, but I'll be done even before 15 minutes. Now, I'm here to present on sustainable management of agricultural waste in Uganda using the concept of circular economy. I need to mention that the word economy in my study is not actually the economics we know, but it's just a production system. And my work is closely related to the second presentation we had, I think, by Grace. And if you remember, she, in her last slide, she talked about incorporating biogas production to meet some of the energy gaps that we have whenever we have power cutoffs. And this is what I'm going to talk about. Now, I have an article here. I'm going to briefly read a few sentences that relates to this. It was written by Crispus Mugisha on Saturday, 29th April, 2023. I'll read the title as it is. Museveni issues directive on rubbish in the country. It's the title, I'm not the one calling him Museveni. And then, interestingly, it says that our president has said he's tired of seeing stockpiles of rubbish whenever he's driving around Kampala and in some upcountry towns. In his own words, he says, whenever I drive around Kampala and in some country towns, I notice piles of rubbish, in bracket Kasasiro, scattered around the open. This is not acceptable, and within 6 months must end as directed. I imagine how it sounded. Now, he gave another directive that within 1 year from last year, every urban authority, that is municipality, a town or city, must ensure that there is a plan to recycle, for recycling that waste, so that the dumping sites do not become mountains of rubbish, states the president. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm sure we all come in one way or the other from these cities, town councils and municipalities, and of course we must acknowledge the fact that waste management is such a huge problem. In my PhD study, I focused specifically on jackfruit waste, like you can see in my first slide, because of so many reasons, one of which it's a crop that has been neglected, and yet almost 65 to 75% of jackfruit is actually waste. When you see what we eat, the biggest percentage is what we do not eat. Now, where is the challenge? The challenge is that we're already starting to get a lot of orders for dried jackfruit in the US and Europe. Now imagine if 65 to 75% of jackfruit is waste, and you're going to have to export about 1 ton of dried jackfruit. What do you think that translates into? Look at it from when it is fresh. You have fresh jackfruit and 75, so in other words, every 100 kilogram of jackfruit, you have 75% waste. Now that is when it still has water. Imagine if you dry it and you have to ship about 1 single ton. It translates into multitudes and multitudes of waste, and this is what I attempted to deal with. Now, in my introduction, in my title, I talked about the circular economy, and for me, this is what I have to offer as a PhD holder from my research work. The best way to handle this problem is actually to look at it in terms of a circular economy, and a circular economy is this production concept which looks at 2 things. It looks at profits and sustainability, while the linear economy, on the other hand, only focuses on the profits. I mean, if a guy is processing jackfruit under linear economy, all he wants to see, how much profit am I getting from it? Whatever happens to the waste I produce is none of my business. Like you can see, I tried to illustrate, look at where there's a fruit processing industry. Now that's where this chart starts from. We have a facility there which produces waste, which I have shown this other side, organic waste. Under the circular economy, we can actually press this waste and differentiate the solid and the liquid part. The solid part can be taken through pyrolysis to produce biochar. Biochar is that black material like charcoal. Now the liquid part can be taken through co-digestion and anaerobic digestion to produce biogas. And under this concept, we can purify this gas and then take it through the biogas generator, which gives us the electricity, which actually goes back to the production facility where the waste comes from. And that's why we're calling this a circular economy. But also from the biodigester, you see we have the biocellary, which we can still separate the solid part. We can use it to feed the maggots, which are these days being promoted for use as animal feeds. But also the liquid part, because it contains a lot of nutrients, we can use it as a fertigation agent, not just to, on addition to irrigation, but we also supply nutrients to the crop. So briefly, that's what a circular economy is about. You're looking at a holistic approach where everything is being put back to use. So for my study, this is the jackfruit. These are pictures that I took from a processing facility in Ruel. And I think you can see some bits of gentlemen that are standing around there. Now this gentleman, of course, was using a linear economy concept because his waste that was being produced was being managed by digging those disposal pits and then throwing the jackfruit there. The problem is that one disposal pit would take almost 10 men. It would take 10 men about 7 days to dig one disposal pit. But it would only take the facility 2 days to fill the disposal pit. But also there is no land that you're going to have to keep digging those disposal pits. So because of that, we recommend a circular economy concept. And in my methodology, of course, I've already talked about it, but I got jackfruit and then pressed it, crushed it. I pressed it, separated the liquid from the solid. The liquid part was used for biogas production, while the solid part was used to produce biochar. And then from anaerobic digestion, where the gas is produced, there's another effluent called the biocellary, or the dyed state, which I again mixed back with a biochar. And then biochar, because it has adsorptive properties, were able to extract nutrients from the liquid slurry and used the product for agricultural production. And of course, the biogas was used for cooking, like I'll show you later. And in my proceeding research, I'm looking at converting it into electricity. So these are some of the results. These are basically characteristics of the jackfruit waste. But I don't want to go into details of this, but all they point to is that they are showing that actually this waste one is a potential substrate for anaerobic digestion. It has what it takes for it to be biodegraded by microbes, and we get biogas, which we can push to electricity. And then the results also show that it is a good substrate for pyrolysis, and pyrolysis is burning under controlled conditions where there is no oxygen. And in that case, if you burn without oxygen, then you produce a product that is called biochar. Just like you've seen, I think, the charcoal, people who are making charcoal. You've seen that they pile firewood and then they cover the soil. The whole idea is to make sure that there's no oxygen contact so that we don't get ash. Otherwise, if you left it open, the entire thing will turn out to be ash. So that's what the results are all about. These are pictorials of some of the results here that I got. I was able to practically convert the waste into into biogas, as you can see. The other black material is the one that we make from controlled burning, where we subject the dry waste into a controlled environment where there's no oxygen and it turns black. Now down there you can see there's that liquid effluent that's called the bioslurry. It comes from the biodigester. So my actual PhD study, product, was actually a combination of the bioslurry and the biochar. I mixed the two, and the biochar was able to extract nutrients from this slurry, and actually tested both products, and you would see the nutrient-enriched biochar performed much better than the raw biochar. And down here, this is a picture from one of the experiments I conducted in Namlonge. That was nakati that was grown under the different treatments. But all I can say from this is that enrichment of biochar with nutrients from the bioslurry makes sense because it produces better results. In conclusion, jackfruit waste, therefore, given the characteristics that I've shown you, is a potential waste, a potential feedstock for anaerobic digestion, for biogas production, owing to its high sugar and starch content. However, it is lignocellulosic in nature. In other words, it contains cellulose, lignin, and hemicellulose. Now, those are components of biomaterial that cannot be biodegraded by the microorganisms. So that already means that we have to pre-treat it so that the microorganisms can easily feed it. Biogas is a result of microorganisms feeding on the waste, and then it gives us the biogas as a byproduct. So you have to make sure that the feed can be well digested by the microbes. Additionally, given temperature range with the maximum degradation weight range occurs. This is also showing that jackfruit waste is actually a potential substrate for pyrolysis to produce biochar. And lastly, application of nutrient-enriched biochar significantly enhances crop growth and yields compared to raw biochar, as I showed you. In terms of policy recommendations, I recommend that urban authority, just like the president says, they should develop a comprehensive circular economy framework that is specifically tailored to the agriculture sector in Uganda. Of course, now, it should be tailored to us, not to general, or not to tailored to other countries. And then we need to invest in infrastructure for collection, sorting, processing of agricultural waste. These include facilities, compositing facilities, biogas plants, and recycling centers. I need to also emphasize here that one of the biggest problems we have in solid waste management is sorting. I don't know if you've noticed that in this country, you can find one container that will have food waste, plastic waste, old shoes, toothpaste, and all that. Now, unfortunately, the way each of these kind of solid segments is dealt with is different. So it makes it hard to deal with such waste. So one of the things we need to look at is how to segregate waste. As in Stellenbosch in Cape Town recently, and I was amazed in the university, everywhere you see dust bins, they are in threes. One is for landfill material, for example, shoes and all that. Another one is for recyclable material, for example, plastics and anything else. And then another one is for the food material or the biodegradable material. So we need to adopt such practices for proper solid waste management. Number 3, we need to integrate the circular economy principles into the existing agriculture and waste management policies and regulations, and ensure coherence and alignment between the different policy frameworks. And lastly, we need to government should continue to allocate funding for research and development for innovative technologies and practices for a sustainable management of agricultural waste, because without funding, whatever I'm saying is going to remain in my head. And so without funds, we cannot work. Of course, like I've showed you, my PhD study moved on up to biogas production, but I would wish to proceed to purification and then actual conversion into electricity. Why? Because if we leave solid waste management to biogas production alone, we will not have done justice to society, because this gas can, for example, be used to power refrigeration equipment, and then we don't have a lot of our fruits going bad. We can use the same gas to provide electrical energy, which can run some of the equipments in the processing factories. Look at the people in the cattle corridor whose milk go bad simply because they cannot, sustain it between 6 p.m. in the night and then tomorrow 8 p.m. Imagine if we have a scenario where we produce gas from their cow dung, which they already have, and then we are able to give them refrigeration systems that can at least extend their milk up to morning the following day. That would really make sense. But all that require funding, which government should be able to provide. These are some of the articles that I produced in my PhD study. And special thanks to FRUVES. FRUVES was fruits and vegetables for all seasons. We were funded by the Federal Republic of Germany, and also not forget the RIF, Research and Innovation Fund by Government of Uganda, for funding part of my PhD study. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Dr. Dennis Nsubuga. Except you disappointed me. You promised to use that less time, but you used exactly 15 minutes. But the thing was so good that I forgot to remind him that he was left with 2 minutes. But now, this is really the relevance of investing in higher education. These are very beautiful projects, excellent project, except recommending that the government increases funding in research and innovation is one thing, and the government, yes, can do that, but do we put the funds to the rightful use, or we sometimes, no? Every nation for its own, and that. Otherwise, thank you very much, Dr. Dennis Nsubuga. Looking forward to utilizing you after here. The third presenter is Simon Mamanunu. Maybe you'll tell us what that name means, because we are struggling to pronounce it. Do levels of formal education, farm sizes, and gender impact on tomato farmers in the central region in Uganda? That's the question he has. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much. First of all, I'd like to thank the order of how the topic runs, because they are interconnected. My brother was talking about microorganisms and so on, and that is also my area. So I am from Connaughts, and my topic for PhD is not really what I'm going to present. It is what gives me the basis of making choice of the parameters I've used. So that was one of the reasons why I decided to ask those questions and go into the field to look for the answers. Now, in my PhD research, I have been looking at the effect of pesticides, some selected pesticides, on microorganisms also selected in the tomato field. And therefore, that research entails me to go and find out what are the different types of pesticides the common farmer there is interested in and why. And where do they use this pesticide, basically. So from my research, I've realized that most of the pesticides we have here, they are used in tomato production, and there are areas in central region, western region, and eastern region where they use most of these pesticides. So what I did was to pose that question. There are very many other parameters which I looked at in as far as this topic is concerned, but for the purpose of the policy review, I decided to pick the 3 parameters, and I picked it in terms of posing a question that do the levels of formal education, land sizes, and gender affect the production of tomatoes in central region. So this region here, from literature research, this district I chose, the district in central region that produces the highest number of tomatoes. And for the last around 4 or 5 years, the production has stagnated. So say why? I did this research in 2018, before COVID. So I wanted to find out why. So there are very many factors that were involved, and that's why I posed these questions of formal education, land sizes, and gender. So, as a way of introduction, Uganda, as we all know, is well endowed with natural resources. One of the natural resources, of course, is the soil. But because of other factors, the soil resource cannot give us really the amount of whatever crop we put in. And that means there is a deficiency, or there could be some areas where we don't really handle it well. And I thought one of these areas maybe could be level of education. The size of the land these people have in as far as production of tomato is concerned. So when I went out there to look for these farmers, because it's purposeful identification of the people involved in tomato production. So I had to go out there and look for these people who are involved in tomato production by way of asking the LCs, the agriculture officers, and so on and so forth. So we were able to identify them. So in these 5 districts, we did some sample survey where we got around 240 tomato growers, and we interviewed them using we used the open-ended questionnaire. Why did we use that? We used the open-ended questionnaire because we think this gives a wide range of responses to these tomato farmers. So we gave these things to them. We are able to come back and analyze. We also asked them about the sizes of the land they are using to grow their tomatoes. We also got the responses. And then also gender. By gender here, in as far as my work is concerned, I was looking at gender as a female or male species of a human being. Nothing attached to that as gender. Yeah, so I want that one to be very clear. So in terms of the introduction there, therefore, we are saying that tomato being consumed by almost everybody, actually globally, 3.6 million people consume tomatoes in different forms every day. And Uganda, being also a major producer of tomato, we know how we consume these tomatoes in different forms. And to me, my topic here is like talking about money. Because when you talk of tomatoes, nobody's going to ask you, what is tomatoes? Just like when you talk about money, nobody's going to ask you, what is money? So I looked at this. And in the executive summary, because this is what I've got, that the study was conducted in the year in the central region. Objective of the study was to evaluate the impact of levels of formal education, farm sizes and gender on tomato farmers in Uganda. A sample population of 241 tomato growers were selected purposefully. Open-ended questionnaires were used for data collection. Results show that 87, that is 36.1% of tomato farmers completed senior 4, and that is the highest. Then 58, that is a 24.1% completed primary 7. Then 39, that's 16.2, were below primary 7. Then 33, that's 13.7, had completed senior 6, and 24, 10% were diploma holders and above. Now, there is a correlation. When I looked at that result, there is a correlation. It appears that as we entered formal education, we have interest in tomato production as we move. When we reach senior 4, that is now the maximum interest in tomato production. We reach senior 6, the curve comes down. And when we get our diplomas and degrees, it is down there. Now, if I may pose a question here, these are all degree holders. How many of us are having maybe a quarter or an acre of tomatoes? I want to prove this point. There may not be one there. So this research is very telling, and we think we need to do something about it. And then next, the materials methods. As I said, we use the word open-ended, and these materials methods based on what was got from the research, from the search literature. So why we decided here to choose Masaka, Mubende, Luengo, Mitiana, and Sembabule. These are districts in the central region where a lot of tomato is being produced. And also it's like a split of 1 or 2 bigger districts that have been split into smaller ones. So we chose this thing intentionally because, one, it is easier for us to access these districts, and with the help of research assistant, we were able to do so. And more so, personally, I reside or I come from Itiana, and therefore it was easier for me in terms of transport, in terms of funding and so on to get onto that. So sample population, I was saying that instead of using a huge number, we knew it would be difficult for us to have the means, transport, funding, and so on and so forth. So we decided to use sample population, and here we targeted tomato growers. And why we use this sample population? Because, one, it is even less time consuming, it is less expensive in time of transport costs and so on, and also it gives, the open-ended questionnaire gives opportunity for people being interviewed to go beyond what the research expert wanted to know from them. Having done that, we got this result. Table 1, level of formal education of tomato farmers in the district, in 5 districts in the central region of Uganda. This is the level, we say level of education, number of farmers, and the percentage, which we said in the first one table there, that below primary 7, we had 39, and that was the percentage. Primary 7, those who finish primary 7, there are 38, and we go 24.1. Ordinary level, that's senior 4, they are the highest, 87, that's 36.1. Then advanced level, that's senior 6, 33, then diploma and about 24. Total 240 and 100%. This is as far as a level of education is concerned. So that question, does the level of education affect tomato production in Central Region? We shall answer it there, as per this number here. So let's move on to table 2, size of farms in acres of tomato farmers in Central Region of Uganda. We try to categorize those who had less or from 0, those who don't have, because somewhere there's where people are hiring. So those who had from 0 to 2, and 2 and less than 3 acres, from 3 as less than 4 acres, from 4 and less than 5 acres, then more than 5 acres. Also, we had the numbers interviewed, and we realized that in terms of farm sizes, the majority of the farmers interviewed had less than 2 acres. And those people constituted 100, there were 100 of them in number, and the percentage came to 4.5. Then we had those who had 2 and less than 3 acres, were 35, percentage 14.5. Then 3 and less than 4 acres, 25%, 10.4. And then 4 and less than 5 acres, there are 16, percentage 6.6. And then more than 5 acres, there are 65, percentage 27. Total, as usual, 240, percentage 100%. So the sizes of farms also determines the production of tomatoes. And here, when we probed further, those who had less than 2 acres were the majority. Why? We were asking why. They are saying that you see our land tenure system, especially in Central Region, even in our place, is through heirship. And in most cases, the male are the people who are, who are made heirs in case of death and so on and so forth. So, and because of the increase in population and land remaining constant, then these pieces of land is being divided among the children and so on and so forth. So most of these people who are involved in the tomato production here have land which is less than 2 acres. And then the anomaly here is about the more than 5 acres. There are 65 and a percentage 27. Now, these people here, these are big people with farms, but their major production is not really tomatoes. So these are people who can hire, labor, and they use, the labor to produce different types of crops, but they constitute the majority in terms of land size. Then the list here was 4 and less than 5 acres. So in other words, the sizes of land, the sizes of land also impacts on the production of tomatoes by farmers. Then gender. The gender, we saw 153 people, or farmers, were males who were involved in tomato production, and 88 were females. Now, what could be the problem? When we probed, they are saying this thing boils to what I was saying before, that land ownership. The majority of the people who own the land, they are the males, and therefore, that's why they are involved in that production. And then the women, they are the minority in as far as farm production, tomato production is concerned. So, the 3 tables answered the questions I posed at the beginning, that do level of education, formal education, acres, sizes of land, and gender affect tomato production? So the answer now is yes. All these factors do affect the production of tomatoes. Now, in terms of if they do, now, the discussion, they told me I'm remaining with only 2 minutes. I want to go to recommendations. As I was presenting this, I was also trying to point out the reasons why, so that falls under discussions. So recommendation, we said more agricultural extension of services to be extended to tomato farmers to improve upon tomato production. Why have I recommended that to policymakers? It's because currently we have one extension officer to 1,500 farmers. So this ratio is unsustainable. So to the government, to the policymakers, we need more of these extension workers. If I had presented the whole thing, because there are questions of how or whether these farmers are able to read the instructions on agrochemicals which they use. How do they mix this thing? What type of agrochemicals do they use and why? So we need these people to go out there and impact knowledge on these farmers, because as we have seen, the majority of them, they are not really highly educated. Even all these instructions have been given in English. 2, females to be encouraged to participate more in horticultural agriculture, especially the vegetable production, where I've been looking at the tomatoes. Why the females? Because I'm a father and I'm married, but my children have never come to me one day to ask me, Daddy, what are we going to eat today? No, they have never. So the women are the ones answering all these questions. And the tomato actually will be the cheapest to grow, because tomato takes between 65 to 75 days to be ready. And it is used in all types of sauces. So that's why I strongly recommend that more agricultural extension officers should be produced so that they are able to go out to the field and advise tomato farmers. Here I'm talking about tomato farmers because that's the point, but otherwise general farmers, and we need to involve women in the production of horticultural crops. In conclusion, therefore, we are saying that education should be used for positive attitude to change towards agriculture, since from the research that most farmers have less than 2 acres for tomato production, therefore intensive agriculture is needed. So male dominance in tomato production is good for family livelihood. However, more females should be encouraged to embrace tomato production to improve the livelihoods of their family members. On my slide here, you are not seeing acknowledgement. Maybe I take this time to acknowledge myself, because it was me who looked for this money, who went outside there is nobody. So I'd like to thank Makerere University for giving me the platform to come and present this thing. Thank you very much, dear colleagues.
Thank you very much, Dr. Simon. Mama Nunu, in the American system, all these are doctors. You say ABD, all but doctor. All but doctor, except the one who is already a doctor. So these ones are ABD. And thank you, Dr. Simon. Mama Nunu. It sounds like a Swahili name. And I requested you to tell us what.
Now,
30 seconds.
Yeah, 30 seconds. I'm a Madi from West Nile, from Germany. And for us, Mama, it's not Mama. Same spelling word, but the way you pronounce it, it's Mama. Nunu Simon. So Mama means let me try. Not mother. It is let me try. No is somebody who is very much loved or liked, for that matter. So my name, these are 3 names. Mama Nunu Simon, from Germany. Okay. Emadi.
Thanks for sorting me. Mama Nunu. But still, forgive me if the pronunciation is not how it ought to be. You said mothers are the ones who are thought of last, when it comes to the food chain, and at home your children have never asked you, but they ask for their mothers. 15 minutes from now, the mothers will be telling us something to do with that. But permit me have, there is one person whom we thought was not around, but I've been informed is online. Therefore, Jimmy Chachiga will be presenting
Yes, hello.
online, and he's going to tell us something to do with performance analysis on a single tank energy storage system integrated with a cooking unit for solar cooking application. All these people are in food, cooking, and what have you, so we can't dose. Jimmy, are you there?
Yes, I'm here, but you need to allow me to share my. Can I share my slides? The host has to disable.
And the IT people have permitted you to.
Yes,
so
I cannot. It's still blocked. Okay, very good. Thank you.
Welcome.
Fantastic. Yeah. Thank you so much. My name is Jimmy Chachiga. I think I'm audible enough. I'm here to present my work, my very noble work on solar cooking. And the title for today is Performance Analysis on a Single Tank Energy Storage System integrated with the cooking unit. And in this case here, we are looking at the team that we are working with is the one in the picture. We have Dr. Karidewa Nyenga, Dr. Dennis Okello, Professor Ole. These are two collaborating teams from Makerere University and Norwegian University of Science and Technology, where I am right now in Trondheim in Norway. So on the solar cooking, we know that first of all, the percentage of trees standing to household has drastically reduced. So we now lack fuel for cooking, because over 90% of the Ugandans believe in the use of charcoal and firewood to cook. However, this resource is limited, and the authorities have already banned the use of charcoal transit and business and trade. And I quote this from the Daily Monitor, when President Museveni issued an executive order, number 3, which banned the production and the trade in northern Uganda. So you expect what the people who are living in northern Uganda to use now. So this is why we were doing research for the last 5 years, and we found that the use of wood fuel is very costly, and is even not available now. And a lot of forest reserve covers are being depleted, and due to deforestation, conflicts, and there is poor health due to smoky kitchens, which are due to using firewood. And you know, when there's no fuel, there's no food. And yet Uganda is blessed with 6 to 7 hours of sunshine hour, a lot of energy from the sun, which we can use it for cooking. So in this work, we are proposing the use of solar PV cooking, which is integrated with the thermal energy storage system as an alternative to the challenge we have right now. And that's why we propose that in this work that we have something of this kind. We have a sensible heat storage material, which is vegetable oil. And then in this vegetable oil, we tested refined sunflower oil. We also tested rocky oil and buto and the rest. And we've discovered that these oils can store heat for a longer period of time, and you can use it for cooking. And among other oil we tested, also we have the mineral oils that we tested with the rock pebbles, aggregates. We found they had good thermophysical properties. And because the already existing systems are found sort of low quality heat front, there's a lot of mixing, there are poor charging and the rest. So our new system that we have innovated right now, which I will show you, is going to be a game changer in solar cooking. So this is the schematic diagram showing the system design that we have already developed as with a prototype at Department of Physics. In this you see figure A and B. Figure A is the earlier concept that we started with, and we found that it had poor energy lineup and it could not be used for cooking so much. So when you see figure B here shows to you 3 components which are very, very important. In this component, the red zone here, we confine the solar heating only to a very small area, which we call it a funnel. And then the blue zone is oil, which is cold. So in this case, we have now separated the kind of energy layer. So we are not mixing hot oil and coal oil together, because we know solar energy is intermittent. So you need to use it well. When there's a cloud cover, the global solar irradiance reduces. So in this case, when we get sun, we supply a DC current to this heating resistive heating element in the red zone. The red zone is heated. It is in contact with the numeric number 2, which is called the cooking unit. This cooking unit, that's where you put your food. And you can put your beans, you can put your banana, you can put matoke or whatever, rice, beef. You put it in that unit and you cook from there. So you can cook when the sun is of low irradiance, and even you can cook in the process in the evening when the sun is not available. Because in the evening, this is what happens. During daytime, you are cooking from the heat storage, and also you are storing heat in the oil and the rock. The blue zone and the red is all oil for this case. So the blue is cold oil, the red is the hot oil, which has been heated by solar. So in this case, you can store this heat in the evening when the sun is not available. You still put your food and cook using the red zone, because already every time the cooking pot or the where you put your food is in contact with the hot oil. So in that way, you can have a good mechanism. And then this system here, which has, we call it a funnel, you can lower it down, you can increase it, so that you can vary the cooking rate, you can vary temperatures, you can vary the energy during cooking, and even the time of cooking. So that's how we put in the mechanism. So, and these are some of the equations which I'm not going to go through it, the governing equation we use in this system. And we already installed 1.8 kilowatt hour at the top of the physics department, rooftop, with some radiation sensors. So for this system alone, we have 6 panels here, but for the system, we are only use 2 of the solar solutions, like concentrators, box cookers. You must take them outside the home, and you cook from there. And people are not happy with that, because when there's rain, you need to go backward and pick your thing and everything. So, but our solution in this case of this test is on indoor cooking, indoor solar cooking. So we were able to cook beans, because our aim is, if you can cook beans in the recommended time of 2 hours and 30 minutes, then you can cook any kind of food that you are interested in cooking. So that is the system that we developed at Makerere, and we have been testing for the last 2 years, and we are very happy with the results of the cooking. And it is purely supplied by DC power. There's no batteries. We only have the solar panels direct into the system. So, and we even went ahead to develop other components for cooking for 5 to 7 people. We even developed for institution, the bee. This bee here it can cook up to 10 liters of food. And the second one we developed, and it could cook after 15 liters of food. And you see these tanks are big like that, but inside it we have insulation. The first one is only 7 liters of it's called a mini cooker. It's 7 liters of oil, which we heat using solar, and we cook on it on discharge and during charging. This one here is a 50 liters of oil. We develop it, and we're able to cook up to 10 to 15 kilograms of food. This other one also is we put the 80 liters of oil, and this oil we are now using, we use refined sunflower oil initially. But we have also tested mineral oil, which are non-poisonous, because this is going to be for cooking food. So we wanted you to have non-poisonous item in this system. And we have been testing the oil for charging and discharging. And these are some experimental setup which are in the lab there, which we use for testing. And some equation which I think for equation which we have them here is for, first of all, the thermal charging. We got the efficiency of the system. We got how much energy is consumed by food and the rate of energy consumption, and even got how much energy can be extracted from the system by beans, by cooking, say, boiling beans, boiling rice, boiling meat, and the rest. What we did not do is we have never fried on it, but we have been boiling so many things on that system. So these are some of the results, which we, to show you how hot this system is, the single tank system. So when you look here, for only 10 minutes, your temperature against time here. For the first 10 minutes, you can have high temperatures up to 100 degrees, and in 20 minutes, you can have around 140 degrees. And we need, for cooking, we need like 120 degrees or to 150 degrees. If you have 200 degrees, it's much better for other systems for cooking, say frying and the rest. So, but for boiling and the rest, a temperature above 140 is sufficient for cooking. So at the top of the DC, you see the red zone here in this thermal camera image. You can see the temperature here is over 150 degrees. So you can, it is at this white point where you put your cooking pot and start cooking from there. And you can cook well, even the temperatures at the bottom of this system is still just below 120 degrees. And we did that for different kind of adjustment. This is the first adjustment. Then we did for the second adjustment, even the temperature went higher up to 200 degrees. So at that point, you can boil beans in 2 hours. And we use standard test of 1 kilogram of bean, and we were able to cook it within 2 hours. And that was comparable with other stoves, improved stoves, which are in the market. And you can see from there the thermal images of the distribution of energy of the cooker which we have been, and the supply of energy here is purely solar, DC power. And the voltage we are working is only 55 volts. So this table here shows to you the summary of the thermal charging efficiency of the system when the sun is available. And you can see it ranges between 59 to 72. So an average of 70% of efficiency is good for this thermal system. What we got more again is on the cooking while charging. So these graphs A and B shows to you how many times you can cook on the system when you fully charge it, and also how many times you can cook on the system when the sun is available. So in the first A and B, this one shows you are cooking on the history. These peaks here, the green color here shows boiling standard water, 1 liter, 1.5 liters, 2 liters. And you can see the temperature, the energies of the system is decreasing as you boil more liters of water. And this is very good. However, at the top, the temperature is still high, up to 175 degrees. And this is true for charging and cooking on the system. But however, when you don't want to cook during day and you have an alternative system, say like gas or electricity, you can charge your system using solar during the day when the sun is available. Then in the evening, you now discharge the heat storage of oil and to cook your food. So this is a test which shows that the system is resilient to allow heat extraction to take place from the hot oil into the cooking unit. So that slope here, this slope shows to you that we are now discharging the system after charging it. And A and B are some of the tests that we did on cooking beans and boiling water and the rest. So, and in that case, we discovered that during charging, if you are only charging the system, you can have efficiency of up to 74%. But if you are discharging, the efficiency is lowered because at that point you are only using the heat, which is, yes?
You have 2 minutes.
Okay, you are using all the system which is stored in that case. So this is how we have some simulation tests that we got, how many times you can cook on the system, for how many days, I mean lunch, breakfast, lunch, dinner, and the rest. We have a lot of data about it. And lastly is we now know that the benefit of the system. We know 5 kilograms of firewood is sufficient for a household of 5 to 7 persons per day. And we now know that if you use this system in a month, you can save up to money for buying 150 kilograms of firewood, which is almost a bag of charcoal. And you know the price of cost is costly in Uganda. So, and also above that, on climate change, you can save you can reduce the CO2 gas emission of up to 271 kilograms per month per household. Now in Uganda, if we have about 20 million people using this system, then we can save up to 5.4 billion kilograms of CO2, and that per month, and that is going to be very significant for our clean environment and even clean cooking. So this is true because 1 kilogram of firewood burns to produce about 1.8 kilogram of CO2. So this would be a very good solution for us. And that's why we recommend for e-cooking policy and incentive for solar cooking financing, piloting and implementation by our government and even developing partners. And lastly, I acknowledge the NORAD funding, Makerere and Department of Physics, and thank you so much, the graduate team, for inviting me for this presentation. Thank you so much. I end there. Thank you. Greetings from Norway. Bye-bye.
Thank you very much, Jimmy. It's an interesting piece in the area of renewable energy and solar engineering, for which you love so much. And maybe when we meet, I'll thank you. Because we joined the teaching together in around 2007, went into teaching, we taught until we said we should better give up with high school. And now we are here. But that is a story for another day.
Thank you so much.
Next, now it's time for our dear ladies. I don't know who said this lineup the way it is, that men had to present first, then finally the mothers come to sum it up. But that's how it is. That's how I got this. And at this time, let me call the first lady, who is none other than Ruth Mbabazi, to tell us something on conversion of carbon dioxide, a greenhouse gas, into a biodegradable polymers for industrial application. Welcome, Ruth.
Thank you. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, all protocol observed. People have been mentioning climate change, carbon dioxide. The question is, can carbon dioxide actually give us a polymer? Now, polymer is another question. Plastic. Yes. The kind of plastic we have here is fossil fuel based. And as a segment in my PhD study, I looked at how I can use carbon dioxide to form plastic. I think that is a term familiar with many of us. When you talk about carbon dioxide, at least from our primary school, we are used to carbon dioxide is a gas that helps in photosynthesis. But rather, carbon dioxide can also form plastic. Carbon dioxide is colorless, and studies have shown it gives the highest percentage, or rather it is the highest contributor to greenhouse gases. What are greenhouse gases? Not all gases are greenhouse gases. Greenhouse gases are those gases, once emitted into the environment, they are the ones that trap energy, that is heat radiation, and re-emit it back into the Earth's surface, resulting in what we call global warming. We shall see an image of that in our next slide. But this gas in particular is renewable. So that means it can be put to good use. As I said earlier on, the polymer I'm talking about is plastic. And of course, as a polymer is a combination of very small units to make a large unit. As I said earlier on, carbon dioxide is one of those gases that contribute to the greenhouse gas effect. So the radiation from the sun comes into the Earth's surface, but then it is reflected back into the atmosphere. But when it gets there, it meets some of these gases. Carbon dioxide is not any different. So as this radiation is trapped by the gases. It is again brought back into the Earth's surface. So with this, we notice that there is warming, and the long-term warming brings about what we call global warming. On a global scale, Uganda, we are still advantaged. We are not highly industrialized. Of course, it's a disadvantage, but on the other hand, it is an advantage. Why? Unlike the highly industrialized countries, as you can see, the ones listed, of course, China, right at the top, of the global CO2 emissions, Uganda only contributes 0.02%. Even on the African continent, it's the same story. Our contribution globally is really small. Nevertheless, carbon dioxide is here. Being a gas, it moves from one point to another. It is not stationary. So with this, we see that there are sources, and of course, many of them, besides the natural carbon cycle, we have a contribution from human activities. And actually, this is what is causing that extra carbon dioxide, which is not taken up by the plants, but rather causing the global warming. And of course, right at the table is the fossil fuel burning for energy. So we can see this, yes, as the previous presenters talked about charcoal, yes. So you can see carbon dioxide is emitted. But also even our industries do emit this gas. And as you can see, energy accounts, unlike all the others. On an industrial scale, it's a small percentage, but energy, because when you talk about energy, it's not only limited to industries, but also the moving cars, the firewood, and all the others. With this in line, we see that because of these emissions, our climate is affected. And of course, the implications are very evident, where we have seen droughts, floods, heat waves, famine, among the many. To bring the story closer home, last month, besides the heavy rains, there was a heat wave in the whole country. I don't know who of you did not feel the heat. But, of course, in March, Monitor availed us an image here in Padel district. You can see the cause of the heat wave, which is, of course, global warming and drought at the same time, where a swamp actually had to dry up. We need, or rather, it is really important for us to control. That's why mitigation measures have been put in place. Many of them are directed towards renewable resources like wind, but the question here is that CO2 is a problem, and it is very present. We ought to have, or rather we should seek a capture solution. And during the capture of carbon dioxide, of course from the point sources, that is the industries, this gas can be captured using some solvents, which are basically basic in nature, compressed, and then transported. But what is the end use? It is either stored or utilized. And of course, in the storage, we look at this as the carbon capture and storage. This one, when the carbon dioxide is captured at the point source, it is normally taken either into the ocean seabeds or the originally depleted geographical sites. That is where it's put. But we are not sure, it being a gas, that it will come back into the environment, which it actually does. This makes this option very expensive and also non-reliable. So the utilization strategy is a preferred option. The carbon dioxide is captured and made to good use. So that brings me to a segment in my work. So the utilization, so many things can be done, or rather so many things can be produced out of the carbon dioxide. And as you can see, only 1% of the emitted CO2 reported globally is what is being utilized. That means there is a vast amount of CO2 that is not utilized. As we can see, or rather, that's why we are seeing the global warming. So in my particular research group, I focused on the synthesis of plastic, which is gigantic compared to others, because a lot more. I told you it's a large molecule. That means it requires much of the CO2 to form all these. So it can reduce, or it can greatly reduce the amount of CO2 in the environment. But why was this study important? To date, as I say, our emissions are still low on a global scale. But with the recent oil exploration in the Albertine region, these amounts are going to significantly increase. And we shall be competing with those in highly industrialized countries. So there is actually need to address or to curb this beforehand. That's why, as Uganda, as a nation, we actually signed, or we are part of the Paris Agreement. We signed to it, which is aimed at curbing CO2 emissions in the environment, which is the chief contributor, by coming up with measures to reduce these emissions. And as we can see, this, as I said, it can be used to produce biodegradable plastic. This can be used in different industries, agriculture being one of them, because as we know it, the current plastic is not degradable. It stays in the ground for quite a number of years. But why do we go for CO2-based plastics? They are strong. That means they can compete with what is already on the market. But the most important as well is their biodegradability. They can be consumed by microbes. And to date, the European countries, in alignment with the Paris Agreement, they are already incorporating the synthesis of biodegradable products from CO2. And these happen to be some of them. Uganda is not any different. So the challenge here, we can see that currently, much of the plastic is from fossil fuels, which are actually not renewable. Besides being non-renewable, they are toxic. There's a specific component which are calling phosphagen. This compound is toxic, and it actually happens to be one of the ingredients, or rather one of the starting materials in the synthesis of this plastic. It is one carbon. But why don't we adopt still a one carbon renewable resource that is abundant for the synthesis of this very same plastic? And this particular study can be traced back in a lab scale 50 years ago in the 1969, in the year 1969, where they tried it out, and actually it did work. So as a segment in my research, I went ahead to develop a catalyst, because this particular reaction cannot, as in itself, we are having the CO2 redundant in the environment, so we need to cause it to add together to form the plastic. So I developed a catalyst, which is just another portion, but in a particular, as you can see in this laid out scheme, in a reactor, which was about 100 mils, we are using reactors here because the gas had to be forced into one component, coupled with another solvent. I generated a crude solution, as you can see in the second, image, which I filtered with ethanol to precipitate it out. And then, as you can see, there displayed, there's a plastic product. It actually came out. Because one would wonder, is it possible? Yes, it was possible. And I noted with just a small volume, I was able to come up with a plastic that was about 47 grams of plastic per gram of catalyst. So, in light with this, there was a catalyst developed, but at the same time there was a polymeric material on table. So, to inform policies in the nation, government ought to invest in this kind of research, given that we are already looking forward to mitigating, or rather we are in compliance with the Paris Agreement, so that we can scale it up, and also to probably address the near future problems with emissions due to the Albertine oil exploration. But at the same time, for the industries that are already in place, there should be term incentives available to them, such that they can recycle their carbon dioxide, furthermore for useful purposes. But at the same time, regulation is key, and also not to leave the ordinary man. We should get them involved of the advantages of the plastics that can be produced from carbon dioxide. So the takeaway here, actually a polymer was formed with my design catalysts, and for sure it is safe for the environment and it can be applied. So these are basically some of the outputs of my work, and of course I can't fail to forget to thank people who made this very possible. Thank you for listening. Aluta continua as we build for the future.
Thank you very much, Ruth.